Welcome to another episode of Don't Call It Small. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. If you don't know me and you have no clue what this podcast is all about, let me share a bit. I'm the CEO of Foreman Associates, LLC, where we provide consulting, business support, and professional development services. And Don't Call It Small is where we talk all things business, share tips and news that you can use, and highlight the people and ideas behind the products and services that we buy. To learn more about my company and me, please visit ForemanLLC.com. Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I am so very excited. You just don't know how excited I am. Let me do this. It is great to be back for another episode of Don't Call It Small. I've been waiting months for this opportunity, and after today, you will hear more from this amazing woman that I call my right hand. Let me properly introduce her. Eboni Brown is an administrative professional with over 10 years experience. She also has over 8 years of management experience, an MBA with a concentration in public administration, nonprofit organizations, and a BS in business administration with a concentration in project management. She has a certificate as a grant writing specialist and extensive accounting experience, including managing annual budgets, overseeing expenditures, and performing daily closeouts. Her professional responsibilities have included supporting multiple C-level executives and small business owners with all aspects of office management. And she has helped organizations with creating, implementing, and training various standard operating procedures that help to build and strengthen an entire administrative teams. She has this amazing desire to learn, solve problems, get the job done the right way. She is an efficiency and effectiveness fanatic. You just don't play with her. It's like she's the Energizer Bunny. Wind her up, let her go, and she'll get the job done. Oh my goodness, I can go on and on. I'm going to keep going on and on. I know Ebony's like, oh my gosh, she's probably over here blushing. She has great interviewing, hiring, and training skills. She's very organized. And as I already said, the efficiency and effectiveness, it just runs hand in hand. She is an amazing multitasker, amazing office manager, accounting coordinator, executive assistant, customer service coordinator, and sales manager. And that is just within the context of your business environment. When you see Eboni in the community, I can't keep up with her because she's all over doing so much. She's very active in the community from various roles in the Girl Scouts of America organization. I think that was 7 years, Eboni, right?
Yeah, probably a little bit longer than that.
Probably about 7, 8 years in that. She's also oh my goodness. I can't wait for her to share with you everything she's doing with Toastmasters and International. She went from taking an idea of this location, and it's just, I've been so proud to be able to come to the events and see what she has done with and through, Toastmasters International. She's also involved with Project Management Institute, My Sister's Keeper, and so many other national, local, and global organizations. After hearing all of this and after today's conversation, you will never be ever question and wonder why she is my right hand. Without further delay, Eboni, I want to officially welcome you to the Don't Call It Small podcast as an on-air contributor. Okay, you're not getting away now. I've got you locked in. So, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I was like, she sounds awesome. Who is this person? It's like, oh, that's me. I'm excited to be here. I know I've supposed to be on here forever, and I don't know what episode this is going to be, but I probably should have been in like one of the first 5. So I'm glad we were able to finally get this time scheduled. So I'm doing well. A lot of changes going on. I'm working part-time at an organization called Grantmakers for Southern Progress, and this has kind of introduced me to the world of philanthropy, which is really a completely different world. Money is money, but how you spend it often changes across businesses. And so I'm really enjoying this. And Grantmakers for Southern Progress focuses on social justice organizations in 12 states in the South. And so that has been so awesome to meet these people and be introduced to this world and just do something that I didn't even realize that I had a passion for. Like you said, with the volunteering, Jessica teams to do a lot of that, and Toastmasters is really big right now. Volunteering with Classy Business Society, and that group, just this amazing group of women that's all we do. We go out and we volunteer and we give back, and I have a strong passion for that organization as well. And just being a mom, my oldest son will be 17 next month, and so that's really weird for me, but I'm kind of excited. Like, yeah, he's almost out my house. So a mom of 3 on top of everything else. So just enjoying life and just trying to keep it moving.
I love it. So tell people, because not that many people know really what Toastmasters is all about. Like, we know the name and we're like, oh yeah, those people that they speak, like they do some speaking or something. But I think the vast majority of us are ignorant as to what Toastmasters is all about and how it could be beneficial to us individually and collectively when you look at teams.
Absolutely. So Toastmasters International is an organization that focuses on developing your speaking and your leadership skills. And it is, again, an international organization. So there are, I think the last estimate of over 300,000 members across the globe. And this starts on the smaller scale as chapters, local chapters in your area. I had the privilege of starting my own chapter when I worked at Operation Hope about 4 years ago, and that club is still thriving and is still doing very well. And from there, I started doing various leadership roles. And so in this year, 2019, 2020, I'm serving as a division director, which means that I get to oversee 20 to 25 clubs in downtown and midtown Atlanta. And so the cool things about this, if you're looking at businesses, you start on a small scale, right? So it's just you and maybe 1 or 2 employees. And then hopefully maybe your desire to grow and oversee different groups or a large amount of people or a large amount of offices, if that's your desire with a small business. And Toastmasters just provides you with a place to kind of learn these skills, to hone these skills, and then to get positive feedback. I love my Toastmasters chapter. It's almost like therapy for me to go there every morning and practice speaking. A couple weeks ago, I actually did a speech with a member of the club where he had to interview me. So it was really good practice for doing the podcast today. So just working on those skills. My biggest issue was speaking quickly, and so I hope that I've been able to slow down and that you guys are able to understand my responses, but definitely focusing on the leadership track as I kind of move through my career and see where that takes me.
Well, you know, I'm a fast speaker as well, so I'm always having to to critique myself. And there are some episodes that I do, and I'm like, whoa, lady, you were really fast talking there. So I totally get that. Now, you know, I shared your bio, but I'd like to break it down into some chunks because, as you know, I'm always looking for opportunities to connect you with people and connect people with Foreman and Associates. And, you know, I'm always trying to connect. And so today's episode is we're talking about Let's Talk Numbers. And honestly, Ebony, I'm letting you know now. And so I have it recorded for everyone to be my witness. That's really what, like, I want the segment with you to be, but it's not just always numbers as far as accounting. It's numbers in all elements of the organization and the basis of like how you were talking about the fundraising, right? That's the numbers. And then operations and in the ways and the numbers as far as team building and numbers as far as customer relationship building, right? There's always this element of when we're looking at reporting and how we control for, you know, managerial control, we're always looking at those numbers. And so I want to be able to find a way to weave into your already busy schedule, maybe like an episode a month where we can sit back and really talk about the various ways in which numbers play a major role within organizations. And
absolutely.
So with that, you have an MBA and your concentrations in public administration, nonprofit organizations. Can you break that down in layman's terms?
Sure. So on a personal side, I told you my oldest son to be 17, and so I'll be turning 35 too. His birthday is a day before mine, so he was literally born a day before my 18th birthday. And within that, I was finishing up high school, and I knew that I still wanted to go to college to get that degree, because that's typically what we're taught, to get your education and things like that. And so when I was deciding on what I wanted to focus on, I wanted to get a degree that would kind of give me some different space and different rooms to kind of play in different areas. And so I decided to focus on business. And business is very broad, and it can put you in a lot of different places. And so in undergrad, that's what I did. I got a bachelor's of science in business. And then when I went back to school to get my master's in business, I was like, okay, so I want to focus more on this. And I'd had a real bad experience in a corporate arena, and not to knock all corporate companies, that's just the experience that I had, because they were always focused on the bottom line, and I felt like the focus wasn't on people. Mm-hmm. And so within the nonprofit world, your focus typically is on doing better in whatever area is to uplift humanity in some kind of area. So I decided I would go and focus on that. And so I did a MBA, just a specific master's in business, and then I did that focus on nonprofit management. So after obtaining my master's in business, I've only worked for nonprofits with the exception of one job since then. And I can say it's a completely different experience once we kind of talk about the numbers things. Numbers are numbers, but as far as my work environment, the work that I feel doing, because typically when you're doing whatever your business that you decided to do, you want to do something that you're passionate about. You don't want to go into a job or a career for the money. Otherwise, it's just going to stress you out on a daily basis. And so I'm happy that I made that pivot and happy that I made that decision to focus on nonprofit. And that's kind of the area that I've been in. And when I'm working with small businesses, with my clients, they're in both areas. Some are for-profit and some are nonprofit. And so I've kind of had to dangle in both worlds. But having that educational background and the real-life experience in both has really helped.
And I love what you said, because if more people really understood the insides of the nonprofit, and that's something that when we talk about looking at your workforce and looking at your employees, so many companies have this focus on either its bottom line or is a combination of bottom line and the customers comes first. And you and I have had conversations before that if the customers always comes first, then where's the value of your workforce? And you find out a lot about the leadership of a company when the employees don't come first. And I feel that there are some nonprofits that still have that mindset, right? We do know some nonprofits that feel that the client, that the public, the general public comes first, and even then their workers don't, have a strong footing. But at least there is a giving concept, an understanding of giving through the nonprofit that more for-profits should do, not just to have a public, CSR, that corporate social responsibility, thing to check the box, but to actually just do it and live it and breathe it. So I love that you're sharing that, because that's something that when people are talking about, they want, to reach more people, that's the numbers. And so, and how do you reach more people, and how do you, it's in the way in which you give of yourself. Not that you're trying to find that angle to, because sometimes I think some businesses come with this hustle angle, like you're trying to get something for nothing. And I really do. I like what you said about that, because if more people have the opportunity to look through that other side, you'd get the numbers. You'd get those bodies in there. You'd get more workers that want to stay. Right?
Absolutely.
So you have a concentration in project management. And this is another thing that I know I have conversations with people a lot where they really don't understand what project management is and what project managers do and why they're so vital to every type of entity, not just your business, but what's going, you have a community group or anything else. If you have a person with project management experience, how much time and energy and headaches that can be saved
Right.
with that. So can you explain what project management and your role as a project manager, what it's all about?
Absolutely. So with project management, and the easy example I like to give when trying to help people understand in a layman's terms, and everything that we do, you can kind of look at it as a project. So for my parents, if you're planning your child's birthday party, the party itself is a project. And then you look at, okay, I have to do the invitations, I have to order the food, I have to find the entertainment. So all of these things have to be done in order for this project to be considered successful. So when I decided to focus on project management, initially I knew that once I mastered a task, I got bored at it and I didn't want to do it anymore. So that would leave me sitting there at work, kind of going through the motions and typing very rapidly as I finish an assignment because I've mastered it and it's no longer any fun for me. And so within project management, a project specifically has a beginning and it has an end. And that beginning can be, so we're November 17, 2019, and then the end could be how many ever years, it could be how many ever months. So even as we're talking on this podcast, so it could be, the date, the time, and then the time that we finish, and that's the end of that project. But it changes. And so, next week you'll have another podcast, and that'll be another project, and you have to find the person that you're interviewing and set up the time and all of these steps. So when you have a project manager, you have the person that's responsible for all of that. And it saves you a headache. Typically, when we're the CEOs of our small businesses, we're big picture people. And I love my clients because I understand that they're all big picture people. And Eboni has to be the little detail person to ask them, well, did we order this? Or, did we do that? And all those little details that they're not going to think about. And that's why they love that. I was in a conference this week with my boss for my regular job, and I just talked to her and I let her know what's going on. She's like, "Oh my God, Eboni, I love you," because she really would not know what was going on if it wasn't for me, like providing her these step-by-step tasks or what needs to be accomplished. And so within project management, it's very crucial. And then it's in whatever area. So it doesn't have to be, my focus in project management was very overall, just how to set up different timelines and allow buffer room and kind of things like that. But you can get into technical project managers. You just want to be able to, someone that has that experience in that background of whatever it is that your business is or that you're working on. And it just saves you a lot of time and a lot of, like you said, a lot of stress.
Yeah, it definitely does. Now, the grant writing specialist certificate you received, did that have something to do with the fact that you've been working with nonprofits and this was an added tool, resource, superhero skill set that you were bringing to the table?
It was when you typically the majority of nonprofits are funded through grants, or at least that's one of the sources of revenue that they will have on their books. And so when I was kind of trying to build, like you said, my skill set, I wanted something that would contribute to that. And at a job that I was working at the time, I was afforded the opportunity to take this class that was being hosted by United Way Atlanta. And if you don't know, United Way is a big national organization. And so they offered this, and it was a free class. And we went in and sat for 3 days and kind of learned the ins and outs of grant writing. And now that I'm working in philanthropy, it's a even bigger deal. And I've had the privilege, my current boss, used to be what's called a grant maker, and she was the person that awarded the grant. So now I get to kind of combine what I've learned from a technical side to kind of understanding how it's awarded from a practical side and put that into use. And so a lot of up-and-coming nonprofits that decide to start, or just even regular nonprofits, they will hire out a grant writer. And it typically, I don't want to say it's an expensive cost, but it's one that's well worth it. A friend of mine oversees a nonprofit, and their board approved a grant writer, and I think she charged $15,000 to do so many grants. And the first grant that she got for the organization was $25,000. So her return on investment was immediately $10,000. And he was able to go back to them and say, you see the benefit of this. So sometimes it may seem like a larger expense up front, and that was just numbers to give you an example. But the return on investment is always pretty high for grant writers, just because they know the technical side of it. And then you just kind of work with them to share your story, because that's a big part of it as well. You want the technical side to be done correctly, but you need the personal side to make the grant as appealing. Because you consider there are a lot of nonprofits in the world, even locally or on a national scale. And a lot of people need money, and there's only so much to go around. So you want to make sure that your grant has been done technically correct, and that it's been done from an emotional and very relatable position as well.
So I always have this conversation with people who, they want to start a nonprofit. And I always start to dig and ask the questions, like your motive, your why. Like, why do you want to start a nonprofit? And there are different reasons. Some people, it's that wanting to give back, to do good. And then there's always at least one person that I run into in this batch who I don't know why, but in their mind, they feel as though they can become really wealthy as a nonprofit, the owner of this nonprofit, this creator of, the founder of this nonprofit. And I look and I'm wondering, like, what book are you reading, and why would you think that? So there's that thing, and then there's a second thing that I wanted you to also address. So I'm going to share it now so that, in case I take you down a rabbit hole, you can bring me back as you always do. The second thing is the difference. So many people don't understand from an accounting perspective. They see nonprofit and they think that it's such a big difference from a for-profit, not realizing that a business is a business, right? You have to bring a profit, but the difference is the nonprofit has to allocate that profit. And so I just want you to share, if you will, whether to address that, or to also share examples of people who come into the nonprofit world thinking that I'm going to strike it rich by using this jig, right? This thing.
Gotcha.
Can you kind of address that?
Understood. So the first thing I'll say is this: typically, when you see nonprofits, they are attached to for-profit businesses. So, or do you have foundations and things? For example, Coca-Cola makes all of this money, and then there's a federal requirement that they give away so much of the money, right? So they set up their foundation, and they have this budget where they have to give away money. And a lot of nonprofits are spin-offs of really large organizations that have all of this money, and now they need to give it back. One, they need to give it back from a financial side, but two, like you said, that want to give back and contribute to society. It's very rare, and if anyone wants to email us, say no, you're wrong, but it's very rare that people are just setting up nonprofits without there being a financial backing on the side of it. A lot of the organizations that I work with, a lot of my clients that are trying to focus on a nonprofit, they're working full-time jobs on the side, and it almost makes it exhausting to try to get that nonprofit up and started. When you see big CEOs like of Red Cross or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, things like that, those people at those higher positions that are making six-figure salaries, you have to understand how big these organizations are. And they're not just Eboni's nonprofit in Atlanta, and Eboni gets a six-figure salary. The chances of that happening are very slim to none. And so, again, they're normally attached to a for-profit business that has made a lot of money. You have a lot of family foundations. We see athletes and entertainers that have their foundations when they're giving back. And so Natasha and I always joke when we say philanthropy is for rich people. And it's kind of true. Like, the money has to come from somewhere in order for you to have a nonprofit, in order for it to be set up. It has to be funded in some kind of way. Just last night I was working with a client, and we were deciphering between her programming and her revenue generators. So these are the things that are going to make money so that we can use to implement the program. And so we literally had this conversation. We have to think of this as a business. So I think that answers that when people just come in and want to make money. So you need to make money beforehand and then look at a way to kind of give that money back. I have friends that are very successful business owners that didn't have foundations on the side that they're using. They have their nonprofits that they're giving back to. Even in the conference that I was attending this weekend, there were a lot of family foundations. But again, this is coming from money that has already been in place. And then when we talked about wanting to start, just going in and wanting to start a nonprofit, I had a client that I worked with maybe early this year or last year, and we sat down and we began to look at, and I asked her, what is it that you want to get accomplished? And, where's the money going to come from? Do you want to pay yourself? Do you want to survive off of this nonprofit? Is there money that's in this already? And how are you going to generate income? And so as we kind of started diving into this, we got her CPA involved. What do we need to set up? And the outcome of that was eventually she decided, okay, we're going to start the for-profit first. And so we scrapped the nonprofit idea. There's not to say that we won't eventually do it, but she got a better understanding of, I need to generate some income to be able to fund this nonprofit, or I can kind of split this part of my business as the for-profit business and then have this part as the nonprofit a little bit longer down the line. So it's not to say that you cannot make money off of a nonprofit, but it's not going to make you rich unless your nonprofit gets so large that it's on a national or a global level.
Thank you for sharing that. And can you also share, because, over the past 15 years, I always get, smaller nonprofits who who try to gravitate towards larger nonprofits as though the nonprofit is a foundation of sorts. And I think there's a misconception as though there's this big pot of money and everyone gets an equal share of that big pot of money. And so as my nonprofit of a 1 to 5 years, I'm struggling to get that big sum, and I'm trying to find out, well, why? And can you really just break this down and just so people understand the reality of that big pot and where the bulk of that big pot of money goes to when you look at the nonprofits?
Absolutely. And I was just having this conversation with someone recently. So in my everyday life, when we're talking about philanthropy, a big thing that I'm responsible for is figuring out who funds what. So there can be just a measurable number. So say that it's $1,000 and you want a part of that $1,000 and your organization is working with teen girls. The organization or even the federal funding for this organization may not fund programs working with children. It may not fund programs working with girls. And so, again, you have so many nonprofits and there's so many different areas. You can be talking about animals, homelessness, sex trafficking, trees, housing, like just so many different things. And the money is specifically allocated to a certain sector. So if you don't fall within that sector, then you're not going to qualify for that grant anyway. So it's not that you're not good. It's not that your books not are in order. It's not like that you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You just don't fall up under that pot. And so let's say that you do. So we're going to award money to teen girl organizations. Then you got to think about how many teen girl organizations there are. So then you have Girl Scouts, you have Boys and Girls Clubs, you have girl CEOs, these different types of programs. And so now you all are vying for a part of that. And the organization, the foundation, or federal funding are saying, we only have $1,000 to divide among the hundreds of you, to spread this money up. So maybe we won't this year, but we'll put you on the list for next year. And I've seen that happen. You guys were great. Everything was ordered. We just don't have enough money to give. So there's not this infinite amount of money that it's not going to be dispersed equally. The organizations in philanthropy, the foundations, they want to give, and they have a goal that they have set up. They have an entire plan that they have to allocate 10% here, 20% here, 30% there. I said earlier in my introduction, my organization focuses only on social justice. So there are a lot of organizations that aren't going to donate to our group because we do social justice work. I spoke with people this past week that said, we only focus on healthcare. So it's not to say you can't develop relationships with those people, but to know they're just not funding what you are. so that you could be doing everything right. There could just possibly not be enough money, or it's not your turn, or people have been on this list for years and their number has finally come up. So while you can say in your example, Natasha, oh, I've been around 1 to 5 years, there's people that's been around 10 years. And so now their turn is, and so now that money goes to there. So there's a limited amount of money, a vast amount of organizations, and philanthropy itself is just trying to figure out how do we help the people that we've set target to help, and how do we stretch this money as far as possible. So again, in the previous answer, we talked about there needs to be different streams of money coming from elsewhere. So just go in right now without a business and say, I want this to be a nonprofit. Not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that it's going to be a lot of work, and you're going to have to figure out several different ways to generate income to make the programs that you're going to put into place for this nonprofit. And I think you asked this earlier, and I don't know if I addressed it. So within nonprofit, the nonprofits, like I said, there's not a profit. The profit is just reinvested back into your organization, whereas in for-profit companies, you get to pay out dividends and things like that for organizations that are open to the public and things like that. So nonprofit, you take all this money. You don't go out, oh, my company made an extra $100,000 this year, I want a new Mercedes. So no, you can't do that unless it's a cost that's attributed to the organization. So any money that you make in a nonprofit has to be invested back into the organization, and then you would get you just a traditional salary and how that works.
Thank you, Eboni, for breaking that down. We're actually scheduled. We have it on the calendar for a future episode where we go into further analysis of the nonprofit versus for-profit model, and in ways in which you can have a for-profit, and we're going to talk about one of the structures that is becoming increasingly more prevalent are the for-profits who are doing good works, but they're still for-profits, and it could be because that is their way. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm going to say way, but their way to get to that point, like you said, where when you start to generate enough, then you can form that foundation, or you can form that nonprofit arm, but it doesn't mean that you have to wait. And so the upcoming episode that we'll be doing, I'm going to have you break that all down, and we're going to share different scenarios. And I think I'll also do outreach to some of our listeners who may have questions specific to those three different views of organizations, so that you can be able to hone in and we can really start to show the layers of these different entities so people can make sounder business decisions. Because I always feel bad for people that have nonprofits and they look broken because they're struggling so much and they just don't know why, and they just want to do good. And I'm like, oh, I hope you didn't give up your day job, because it is, I think that a lot of people think that a nonprofit is easier than a for-profit. And I'm like, take the name profit out and just look at it as an organization. It is a business that you have to run. And it's not.
It is definitely a business.
Yeah. Right. So this, I can see the weaving of how you joined the world of accounting, but can you share how you said, you know what? And I know that you're very analytical, but our listeners don't. So can you share, what lured you, what enticed you to the world of accounting?
Absolutely. So a couple of things. So when I was in school in undergrad, I got a bachelor's in business, and you of course have to take an accounting class, a finance calculus class, like any type of numbers and math class. I myself personally, I'm a reader. Like, I love reading and words and things like that. So I thought that was always the focus that I wanted to go. And I think most people that have went to college, you always have this one kind of life-changing professor that kind of steers how you see the world. And this was my accounting professor. And he broke down accounting in a way that it was so easy, because I was very intimidated. I did amazing in finance, and I thought it was going to be hard. And then I went to his class, and I took accounting, and he made it so simple. And he was like, it's debits and credit. That's what accounting is. I mean, of course, there's a little bit more to it but when the bigger scheme of it was debits and credits, and we learned that. And the thing that I'll tell my clients all the time, numbers are numbers, and they are definite, and they are what they are. The only time your numbers are wrong is a user error. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. It's just what it is. If you get a page where 1 + 1 is 3, that's because you did something wrong. And so I like numbers because numbers are definite and they're finite, and they don't change in that sense. I was working as an executive assistant for a company maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I don't remember exactly, and I applied for that job specifically. It was the EA position and the office manager position that was open, and I did not apply for the office manager position because the job description said that you had to know QuickBooks, and I was like, okay, I don't know QuickBooks, so I'm going to apply for the executive assistant position. And I interviewed very well, and I did get the executive assistant position. And during my first year in that position, I succeeded very well in that, and I began to kind of play around in QuickBooks, just kind of seeing what the office manager was doing and kind of learning and watching YouTube tutorials and things like that. And the office manager at the time ends up getting fired. And so in a natural progression, my boss moved me up from the EA to the office manager. I was like, are you sure? I don't know that I can do this. It was very much a lot of self-doubt. And I kind of taught myself how to do the things that we needed to do. Like I taught myself how to do the invoice, and I taught myself how to do the reconciliation. And when you have a lot of these softwares, which I think we're going to talk about later, there are videos and things like that. I mean, there are classes that you can take, but sometimes when it's this small, you can kind of teach yourself. And I learned it, and I'll never remember one night my boss called and said, we need to switch our payroll system. We're going to use QuickBooks. I was like, I'm sorry, we're going to do what? And so I sat in the office all night long, and I taught myself, and I literally changed over our payroll system to whatever we were using at the time to QuickBooks. And at the time, it was a cost-saving thing, right? We already had the QuickBooks software, and we wanted to cut the cost of using the outside payroll company. And it literally took me all night, but I got everything transferred over. And from that point on, we ran payroll through QuickBooks, and it was an expense that we saved upon. And so after that, I was like, okay, I know this, and I can learn it. And I've also wanted to take classes because there are official, QuickBooks training or different bookkeeping training, things like that you can take to be on the safe side, which I wanted to do just to make sure I'm not giving people wrong information. But once I realized that it wasn't hard and it wasn't complicated, because that was always my fear that stopped me from doing certain things, my fear of failing and giving people wrong information, and just reaching out to people that were pros in this area. And one thing I always tell new clients, I'm a bookkeeper, I'm not a CPA. Now, I could go back to school and get a certification. I have no desire to do that at this point in my life. So funny, my ex-husband is tested to be a CPA, and a lot of times I'll call him and just get different advice and things like that. But it's two completely, I won't say completely different, but it's two different jobs. But the basics of what I need to get done for my clients, I'm able to get it done. So I guess to kind of summarize your question, that's how it was. It was that job where I was kind of forced into that position because of another person losing the job, and kind of teaching it and realizing that this was one stuff I had learned in college. Like, oh, I did go to class for accounting. This is what they were talking about. And then just how practical it is on an everyday basis. And then just things that I would do in my own life. I was like, okay, so I do this personally, and then this is how it's transferred into the business world. And then I kind of just fell into a love of it from there.
So I know that there's going to be someone who either they just think they know, or they just going to blatantly say, I have no clue. I know someone's going to say, well, what's the difference between a bookkeeper, an accountant, a CPA, a CFO, which is the chief financial officer? Like all these titles, like what's the difference between all of these people?
So a lot of it, at a certain point, it gets to be a title. So depending on the size of the organization, can kind of depend on what you need. So the easiest way for me to simplify it, when you are, as a business owner, you're going to have to file taxes. And unless your bookkeeper is a certified public accountant, then you want a CPA to do it. We know with the change in the election, there were tax laws that were changed drastically. And you want people that know this, that have been trained in this, that are now researching these new tax laws, and that's what you want your CPA. Your CPA typically is going to be the person that is going to file your taxes and that you go to for their structural advice when it comes to your accounting. A CPA can do everything a bookkeeper can do. They're just going to charge you probably a ridiculous amount of money to do it because they don't want to. They're like, I don't want to. This is not, but if you ask me to bookkeep, and I know this, and I'm not making this up because I've worked with plenty of CPAs that says, oh, I'll absolutely do it. And then I'll charge you, $100 an hour to do it. So if you don't want to do your own bookkeeping or have somebody else to do your bookkeeping. So they can, on a higher scale of things, the CPA is going to be more responsible for taxes and just planning from a larger scale of your overall business. When you get into your bookkeeper, this is a person that's kind of in the weeds with you so I bought gas and this goes here. Or we did payroll and this goes there. So they're really bookkeeping. They are matching your charges into where they're going in your chart of accounts, which gets a little bit more technical, but just kind of everyday transactions. So at any given time, you can know what's going on within your organization. And then the CFO, is typically when we get to the CFO terms, it's because your company is now making some money. It's not to say you can't have a CFO on a smaller scale, but when people start doing titles, they say, well, I'm a manager versus a director, then you start associating salaries with them. So when you say you have a CFO, then your company is probably doing somewhere in the millions, probably $25 million or more that warrants that position. Then it's just a bigger scale of how you're looking at stuff. But for most small businesses, you have your accountant or your CPA, and you have your bookkeeper that typically kind of work in tandem to make sure that all your finances are in order.
And I'm glad that you shared that, because I've seen a lot of businesses that shell out a lot of money to have a CFO and a CPA and the bookkeeper, and there is really not warranted. I hate to put it that way, but I say you could have just really done this with your bookkeeper and your CPA. And
right.
They just weren't there at that point to have a need for a CFO. Now, I do have a friend who her business brings in about $40 million a year. And she has a CFO, but she has a virtual CFO. And she explained to me that she started looking at the hundreds of thousands of dollars that she was shelling out to have someone day in and day out on site. She says I didn't need them day in, day out on site. I just needed them when I needed major, some major moves, or, we needed something to look at strategically or whatever. What are some other benefits of having that type of arrangement of a virtual CFO or a virtual anything, right? As far as a virtual, there's others. What's the other one? Oh, like a virtual chief human resource officer as well. But what's the benefits of those kind of arrangements?
I think going into 2020, virtual is fine with almost anything, unless you need to physically touch me, right? Like unless I need to go to the hospital, I don't see an issue with having virtual. Typically, the costs are going to be lower because you're not having to have office space, right, for someone to come in there. So your overhead costs are going to be reduced significantly. I think a lot of times, I can speak specifically for me, the work gets done faster because I can do it on my own schedule. I might work better from midnight to 6 a.m. in the morning because everyone in my house is asleep, and I'm just up, and I might work better during that space versus me sitting out in Atlanta traffic for an hour to get to an office, and then I'm frustrated, and I got to drink coffee, and I got to calm down, and like half of my day is already gone, and I could have, completed these tasks that I want to get done just in a virtual environment, and then I can work just without the owner. you're not in this same space, and I think that helps out. So I think virtual oftentimes is a great idea. I think the only downside to me that I see is there has to be a good communication structure in place. Typically, the majority of my clients I work virtually, and I try to suggest to them or urge to them the need for them to communicate and get stuff done. So a lot of times needing information from them and needing them to be responsive very quickly. So I try to figure out the best way to communicate with them. And I like for people to have a strong cloud-based document system. So just one paper is not eco-friendly. I get everyone wants to have backup because they think the internet is going to crash at some point, but if you're going to have paper versions, just make sure that it's all stored electronically so that everybody can have access to the things that they need to. And I think it makes it work a lot better. But to me, I think virtually it reduces those overhead costs tremendously, and you're not wasting that money. And so the story about your friend, once you work out what it is that you need, then it reduces that money. I have another client. I just quarterly want you to reconcile. I want to see where we are quarterly, and then at the end of the year, I need all my documents to get in my CPA, and that's it. Versus her paying me to come sit in the office every day to do something that I can spend an hour or two doing, and it saves on her as a business owner, right? So as business owners, small business owners more specifically, you want to save as much as possible. Any company, actually, even on a larger scale, you try to cut costs as much. So I'm a huge fan of virtual, just so as the communication practices are in place, and then the expectations are set between the client and the contractor.
Okay, so if one of our listeners has a business or they're thinking about starting one and they don't have any accounting experience, right? None. Yet they think they can save money and handle the bookkeeping themselves, right? They're like, you know what? I don't have any experience, but I don't have the money to hire someone to do it, so I'll just do the bookkeeping myself. What's your advice to them?
So I'll say try it, and then once you fail, then you'll see the benefit of it. And I'll say this because I have a client now that was doing just that. She wasn't necessarily failing at it. She just realized, one, that she didn't like it, and two, she wasn't being as efficient at it as she needed to be. She was missing different areas to cut costs and things like that. So sometimes, like we talked about, and not to kind of intertangle, but with hiring a grant writer, they spent $15,000 up front, but then she ended up getting a grant for $25,000. So sometimes those upfront costs kind of help you and justify the money, just saying that you just don't have the money to do it. And if you're just super adamant, like I literally, Eboni, do not have any money, then just kind of do some YouTube tutorials or look at videos and things like that, because I'm going to always suggest that you get people that are experienced in this so that they can do it for you and do it correctly. Because in the end, you're going to end up having wasted all of that time when you could have been making different moves and moving forward with what you have. But if you feel that you just absolutely have to try it on your own, then, go ahead. I wouldn't say that you have to hire Eboni, although I would prefer it, right? But if you want to try it and then just kind of see, but you don't want to start off and then you start off frustrated and then you don't have the things that you need. And I think the biggest reason to hire a bookkeeper and have your CPA on standby is when you're looking for money from banks and you're looking for loans and you're looking for things like that, because they want to see financials, they want to see paperwork, they want to see projections, and then your notebook or your Excel spreadsheet is probably not going to suffice for what they need to warrant you these large loans or things like that.
So what are some of the biggest financial mistakes that small businesses make?
I think the biggest mistake that I see, or it's just a pet peeve of mine, is not having a budget.
That is yours.
I've had a client, and I'm just like, so where's your budget? Oh, we don't do a budget. Oh, so do you just spend money, and this money just comes in, and you just hope that you're going to be successful? Like, I think not having a budget is really, we've heard the saying, if you don't plan which if you don't plan to fail, then you fail to plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what not having a budget is. And people get so intimidated by budgets, and I enjoy doing budgets. Again, I had a client call me. She's like, Eboni, I need your help with a budget. I was like, yes. Where do we start at? And I'm like, taking out a notebook. Like, okay, so where is the money? And it's weird. Like, that's that I'm dissatisfied by. But because of the fact that she knew that she wanted one, and we started doing numbers, and we started doing projections, and then we were able to kind of map out 2020 for her and her business. So I think that's the biggest area that I see with companies is not having a budget. And then for the ones that they do, and the ones that are, okay, Eboni, I hired a bookkeeper, I have my CPA, they doing all of that, and I just check in at the end of the year. No, ma'am, no, sir. Like, even if your bookkeeper is your mama or your best friend, then you need to know what your numbers are. I've had a job where my boss didn't even have access to QuickBooks. Like, I set her up in QuickBooks and asked her to create her login, her password, and she never did. And so she never knew what was going on financially with the company. Now, I did my job very well, so we were fine. But it's her business, right? It's her company. So how do you not know and not saying you need to know the little, when we got $15 here, move this, not the intricate parts of it, but just the overall view of how your company is doing. And so I think that you do work with someone you trust, but you need to know your financials as well. And I think the last thing, which is when the CPA and the bookkeeper become very necessary, is with a lot of small businesses. You guys are often combining your personal and business expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got this money, so I need to pay my mortgage with this, I need to pay my phone for this, and this is a business expense, and I bought this car, and I used this car for this. There are laws, and there are taxes, and there are things like that, and if you're not tracking them properly, then you end up being penalized for that. So I remember one time we leased a car for the company, and my boss was not tracking her mileage. And so that was the issue when it came to our CPA doing the taxes at the beginning of the year. So that's not to say you can't use company money to pay for personal expenses, but those things need to be tracked. And if you are not sure how to do those things on your own, then you definitely need to have your bookkeeper and your CPA to make sure that those things are being in the right place. So just not having a budget, not knowing what's going on with your finances, and then combining your personal and business expenses, but not tracking them properly, I think are the three biggest mistakes that I see with new and small business owners.
And why do you think that we do this? Why do you think that this is the mistakes that we make? And it's a consistent thing. Like, it's not something that's just an outlier. Like, it's consistent for small business owners. And I'm guilty of it. You know how many years I'd hand you, and this I'm letting our listeners know. Eboni would get so frustrated with me because I'd hand her these big old manila envelopes and bags of my receipts. Like, all right, Eboni. And then sometimes I would stockpile them, and then I'm handing her stuff, and then she's having to go through and
right, sort them out.
But what do you think is some of the reasons why we do this beyond just our ignorance?
I think the biggest thing is time. And so when you are out and you're having a business dinner and you pay for it with your company card, you don't want to take that 5 seconds to note that this is a business expense on top of the receipt, or I have a meeting for this, or just sitting down to do a budget. One, like you said, ignorance. I don't know how to do a budget, or you don't see the purpose of it. You don't understand why a budget is beneficial. Now, and I harp on budgets because a budget is kind of it's just a budget, right? It's just a roadmap that we're using. And when we're talking to get into specific financial documents, we kind of look at a budget versus actual. So I said in Q1, I was going to make $25,000, right? But when I go look at my actuals, I've only made $15,000. So I need to do some reshifting and readjusting so that by the time I get to the end of the year, I'm not in the red or I'm negative. And so I think we don't want to, as new business owners, we're not taking the time to plan. We don't feel like we have the time to plan. You just have all of these things that you feel that need to be accomplished. And then a lot of times when you're a new business owner, it's just you. And everything again, like we talked about earlier, you don't see the benefit, or you're trying to save the cost from hiring that bookkeeper or that CPA. So all of this is on you. So you're just going to do the bare minimum necessary to get the information so that you can file your taxes, whereas you don't realize that may be costing you several thousands of dollars. So we don't have the time. You're overloaded with what you have to do, and you're trying to grow your business. You're not worried about the little, small, detailed things that could help and assist with that. You're just looking at the bigger thing, and the majority of business owners are just trying to bring in money. So depending on what your business is, you're always trying to bring in money. So say, for example, if you're a caterer, you're always booking that next job, right? You're not looking at the cost of how much the food is or us switching providers and things like that. You're just steady trying to generate that income and not incorporate all the other little things that matter. So it's not to say that you're wrong in what you're doing. Like you said, it's collective across the board with a lot of small business owners, and it's understood, but when you know better, you do better. And so I think that's kind of where you are. So understanding that these things happen, and then if you take the time to address them in the beginning, so you listen to this podcast, and I remember Eboni and Natasha talked about this, I kind of need to focus this, and so that it's not a lesson that you learn. My client that I spoke about earlier that is now saying, Eboni, I want you to help me with the budget. This company is going into their 7th year. And I'm looking at costs, and I'm asking all these questions. We could save money here, we could save money there, but this is now 7 years later. And again, she didn't do anything wrong. She did what she was able to do in the time and space that she had. But had this was something she'd done in year 1, 2, or 3, that's probably thousands of dollars that she could have saved, or just made different choices over the last couple of years.
I also, speaking from my own experience, but also speaking from, doing the consulting for other business owners, I always seem to feel as though there's a fear of judgment, or a fear of like this thing tied to the money. Like if I show you my budget, and my budget, will they think it's low? Like, will they think I'm, like, how will they view me? Or when I show them my books and my financials, am I being judged for it? It's really, and I don't know if you pick this up, but I notice that when I pick it up, when I deal with clients and I start talking about those financials, and I'm talking about, we got to be able to get in. I need Eboni to come in. I look at certain things because I need certain things operationally, but I need Eboni to come in to really see in the ways in which you can save, or where you should reinvest, or where you should pull back. And it's like they clutch on to that so tightly, because it's almost, and like as though we're about to judge them, or we're about to tell them they're lousy. And I try to be like as transparent with as possible. Say, look, I get it. Why do you think, like, if there's something I don't get, I turn to Eboni? Or it's just that thing of, I feel like there's this fear that is so attached to it that we would rather put all of our personal business on Instagram and Facebook than to have to share our financial information with someone.
Absolutely. I think that you're running a business, and you feeling how people view those things that you just discussed is only going to hold you back. I know with a lot of my clients, I try to not be judgmental, or I try not to let anything that comes across, but I'm going to be real with you, and I'm going to, I'll say, so you spent this much on this, and it's not a matter of judging you, it's a matter of helping you understand, well, we could have saved cost here, or we need to do this in order so that you can spend money on that. So when you're working with me, it's never a matter of personal judgment on how you do stuff. It's business to me, and it's business is business, and that's always how I'm looking at everything. So I can understand that fear. A lot of my clients, once we get into that and get into the numbers and things like that, like I never want them to feel that way. I work with friends that we do basics such as budgeting, and I help a friend, and I say, I can show you how to budget all day long, but it's going to be you and your mental that that follows the budget and lives this out and carries on the budget. And when we were setting everything up, and I was like, well, do you mind me seeing how much money you make? Because we just live in a society where that's all secret and things like that. And you're not supposed to know and things like that. And you don't want everybody in your business. But it's literally a business in that sense. And if you have decided to hire a person or you are paying a person to help you, then you need to equip these people with what they need to help you. So if you're going to pay me my fee and you're going to keep everything from me, I'm going to still charge you my fee and I'm still going to do the best that I can. But I need you to trust that you hired me for a reason and give me the information so that I can equip you and then I can make you and your business better. So at the end of the day, the goal is to make as much money as possible. And if you feel the need to hide stuff and keep secrets, that's only going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm. So to wrap up, I have just this kind of cluster of questions because I don't want to keep you long because I could talk to you forever. But when you get a new client, so what are the first reports or what information do you ask for them to share with you?
So, of course, the very first thing is, do you have a budget? So that's always my very first thing because, again, the budget is kind of that snapshot. It lets me know how much money you are projected to have come in. It lets me know what are you projected to go out. And that's always that starting spot. And so a lot of my clients are people that I've worked with in the past and kind of refer to things like that. And so I have a pretty general overview of their business. And so that allows me to ask, well, what about this? And what about this? Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, let's add this. And what about that? So the budget is kind of my starting point. If it's a client that's been in business for a while, and then I like to look at the profit and loss statement and kind of try to figure out why this happens. If you lost money, if it's in the first couple of years of business and that understood, or if you did make a profit, okay, so what did you do well and how can we increase that? And then my favorite document, of course, is the budget versus actuals. So this how well you plan. Your budgets and your actuals are very rarely gonna match, 100%. It can be, higher, it can be lower, but then at least let me see how you're projecting with the numbers that you have in place. So those are typically the first things that I ask for. If it's a brand new client that says, Eboni, I want to start a business, and you haven't, incorporated or you haven't done anything, then of course it's a little bit different from there because then and those are fun, right? Because then I get to help you make a budget. And it's almost like my child, like I raised you, so I instill my values in you. So I like working with clients that are brand new to this and like we said, that are ignorant to stuff because you get to teach them and kind of mold them and they kind of make ideal clients. But we get to work on incorporating the business and making sure that you incorporate it correctly. We talked about that earlier from my client that switched from nonprofit to for-profit, and then setting up a budget and then developing these relationships of how we're going to communicate, how often you want to meet, your budget for paying me. I'm not going to overcharge you or do anything like that. So those are kind of a couple key things that I do. New client, as in brand new business versus an established client that now needs a new bookkeeper or, whatever task I'm assisting them with.
So last question, and then I'm letting you go. We have folks listening. Why should one of our listeners contact Foreman Associates and say, hey, I need Eboni to be our project manager or our bookkeeper or our nonprofit specialist or all three? Why should someone contact us for you instead of contacting another company?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing for me that I personally pride myself in is my work ethic. Like I just said, I'm never going to nickel and dime you. You go to a mechanic, for an example, and you just needed an oil change, and now you need, like, your car's falling apart completely. Yeah, you're going to pay all of this money. So I'm never going to do that with you. I'm always going to be very honest and let you know this is what I see, this is where we are, and I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that we get this done. And Natasha and I, we've been working with a client that we spent several months trying to regain access to their QuickBooks system, but we got it done. And so that's what they paid us, one of the things they paid us to do. And we made sure that that task was accomplished. And so I'll never just abandon you. When we talk about our scope of work and what you want me to do, it's always my job to make sure that these get done in the time frame that we estimated it to get done in. And if it doesn't, to let you know. And I think that goes into the second part of transparency. When we talk about you being nervous about your books or you don't have a budget, I will always be transparent with you and make sure that you understand. I'm never going to try to be rude or anything like that, but making sure you understand why I'm suggesting what it is you need. I just always letting you know what those items are and why I'm suggesting them. I think the last thing is accessibility. I'm always available for my clients to make sure. And I talked about one of those first things is setting up a communication schedule. Some of my clients like to text. Some of my clients like to talk on the phone. Some of my clients like to email. So just kind of setting up that communication schedule that works best for you and making sure that those things get done. And not to never knock anybody else's business, but I try to be a little bit more flexible because as small business owners, I understand. And I think that's the last thing. For the most part in my professional career, have worked with small businesses, and I understand how those small business owners mind things, and I think that's a special skill set. We said with my boss, I know what she's thinking before she says it, and so that better equips me to help you out just because I've done this for so long in so many different genres with so many different people, and it just makes me a little bit more equipped to do that type of work.
I love it. Well, folks, I told you, and I know if you're still listen all the way to this point, then I know that the Ebony has roped you in, and you see why I say she's such a valuable asset and contributor and resource, just because she just loves what she does and she loves being helpful. And so if this is something that you're interested in, you can always reach Ebony. It's EBONI at ForemanLLC.com. She is amazing. Like I said, anytime I can connect Ebony with someone, people start talking numbers. And Ebony, you mentioned the CPAs. One of my first clients, moons ago, he would charge his clients to do bookkeeping, but then he'd have me come in to do the bookkeeping, right? But they're being charged whatever that large hourly rate was, and then I would come in and do the books and everything. But as I've always said to you, that's not my superhero power. So when people start talking about books, hey, I've got the perfect person for you. And I'm like, Ebony, right? That's your superhuman strength. You have so many other superhuman strengths. And I want to be able to keep our listeners engaged with you on a more consistent basis. I'm not going to try to, of course, overwhelm you, but you have such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that I want to be shared. So with that, I hope that you will have a wonderful day, and I will connect with you for scheduling our next round of talks, where we'll then zoom in and talk about the nonprofit, for-profit, and the various models that are in between.
Okay.
All right. And you have a wonderful day. Love you. All right, you guys. Oh my goodness. Can you see why I love Ebony? It's that time again. Time to wrap up. Go our separate ways until next week. I know you're probably really hyped. You probably have tons of questions. So if you have any questions or any suggestions about this show, please email them to us at don'tcallitsmallbiz@gmail.com. Of course, once again, I want to share Ebony's email with Foreman Associates. It's EBONI at ForemanLLC.com. That's ForemanLLC.com. I want to leave you with a quote from Tillman J. Fertitta. He said, "Don't ever let your business get ahead of the financial side of your business. Accounting, accounting, accounting. Know your numbers." With that, be sure to check us out on IG and Facebook at Foreman and Associates, all one word. We're also on Twitter at ForemanLLC. You can follow us, share us with your friends, colleagues, and family. Make sure that you also are following me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I can be found at Natasha L. Foreman. That's NatashaLForeman. Reach out to me, say hello, share your story. As I shared in episode 21, Defia, she connected with me on LinkedIn. I look forward to meeting you. Don't forget that you can also text us your questions and suggestions for this podcast using our text-only line, area code 404-481-1849. Once again, that's area code 404-481-1849. I want to make sure I give proper credit for our show theme song. It's called Higher Up, and it's by Shane Ivers. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, for sharing these episodes with others, and for your continued support. And don't forget what I tell you on each and every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing little or small. Go big, go bold, or go nowhere. I will see you next week for episode 23 of Don't Call It Small, where we'll be interviewing the one and only Mrs. Billy Harris, the CEO, the vinologist of the Vino Van LLC. See you then.